You're listening to the DownShift podcast, taking you trackside for all things motorsport, with four mates from Melbourne breaking down the races, the drama, and everything in between, all with a little banter and a lot of passion. If you love motorsport and cars as much as we do, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you're always on the grid with us. And if you really want to join the team, leave us a 5-star review and support the show through Patreon for exclusive content and bonus perks. So it's lights out, drop the clutch, and let's get racing. Welcome to the Downshift, where the four of us get to indulge our love of motorsport and just talk general rubbish about what we enjoy most about watching the thrill and spills on the track and off the track. So welcome, team. How are we all going, and how did the weekend look for us all?
I'll jump in at once. Yeah, very good. Nice weekend.
As always, yeah, caught up with Nate on the weekend, had a couple of drinks with him Sunday afternoon, which was nice, and yeah, it was a nice relaxing weekend this weekend for us.
Wasn't too bad. Yeah, we had a couple of drinks. I felt a bit bad because I blew up your son's computer, but we fixed that today, so that's all good.
It wasn't my computer, so that's fine.
I did watch a bit of NASCAR. Saw the Cup race this morning, which was pretty good around Circuit of the Americas, and caught up on a bit of the F1 testing news, and that was about it really. Bit of a quiet weekend for me. What about you, Christian?
Probably did about 200, 300 laps of Sebring. So while I didn't quite get to the time that I'd like to be or should be to be part of the team, hubby, I'm happy to say I didn't crash.
Well,
so that was my achievement.
You weren't driving fast enough then, clearly.
Exactly.
I wasn't.
We can
but
find a few more seconds this week, I'm sure.
I'm sure we can. So, but no, so with Sebring coming up, what are we? 12th of April, is it? No,
I think it's 3 weeks. 20.
Yeah, 3 weeks time. So, yeah, so plenty of time to find 8 seconds.
Only 8. There should be no
Only
problems
8.
at all for you.
Yeah. Apparently, I just need to improve a couple of lines, and I'll be spot on.
Yeah. Sure, I'm sure that's all it is.
And so, happy any highlights from NASCAR or?
Good racing as usual. It's a road course, so that meant that some of the road course ringers are up the front. So I was really paying attention to Shane van Gisbergen, who, as we know, used to race V8 supercars here in Australia. So he was one of the favourites, but he started 6th and led the race for a while and looked pretty good, but then faded at the end. So got bumped back to 10th in the last stage and ended up getting 6th. Christopher Bell won ahead of Kyle Busch, I think it was. So yeah, pretty good race. Always was a good bit of action in NASCAR.
Excellent. And it's getting exciting as we release this episode. We're only 12 days out from the flag dropping at the opening race of the season for the Australian Grand Prix. So with things hotting up over the next couple of weeks, we're expecting plenty of news to be coming out leading up to Melbourne. And speaking of which, the F1 class photo has just been released to the drivers. Have you had a chance to have a look, boys, and what do you think?
I've had a look at it. I actually watched the behind the scenes of it, a couple of clips of it as well. And to be honest, the way they're all standing, it looks like they all hate each other and they've been told by their parents to stand like an arm's length away from each other in case they're going to look like they're going to smack each other. And the Ferrari guy, I'm telling you right now, he looks like he's in the biggest trouble of all. He's been told to sit in the corner.
Charles, off you go.
Well, Charles, he's 2.5 meters away from the nearest person. So he whatever he's done, he's told his sister off or something, and he's out. Basically, Dad said, I'm going to turn the car around and drive home, and he's sitting on the outer right there.
This is the first time I've seen it, but it's a very odd-looking group shot.
Yeah.
It looks rather uncomfortable, even. I don't know.
It almost looks like they're superimposed.
Why that is.
Yeah, it looks photoshopped.
Yeah, it's like, what do they normally? I haven't seen previous photos to know the difference, but I thought they lined up on the grid, didn't they, and did shots by the cars or on the track, or is that something different?
I can't remember them doing this before. This is the first shot like this I've seen in memory, but normally they just do some promo shots and the headshot and whatever else. But yeah, I love the fact that you're thrown to the hard-hitting news first, Christian, and we're looking at the photo of the drivers. But
Oh, look,
I must say,
giving this is what they want.
Charles Leclerc just sitting out there by himself with his arm on the knee. It looks like a pose from some 70s fashion catalogue or something. It just looks out of place. Like, I mean, Charles
he just needs a handlebar mustache
pull
to
it
be
off.
fine.
Charles,
The Burt Reynolds.
But I just love the
And you-
spacing. It's like they're planning, if COVID happens again, they could just Photoshop some masks on them and just use the same photo. It does look.
I mean, it works well. It works well for Yuki because he's up the front, so it makes him look taller.
Exactly.
And that's the thing is the sizing just looks off. I mean, if you look at Isaac Hadjar, now I know he's not big, but he looks like a gnome in the back in the middle.
It's an odd picture. It's an odd picture. I can't see them using it very often anywhere, but if we have it, we can look at it and we can laugh at it. So that's all that matters.
Well, I can't see kids going, oh, I want to put that on my wall.
Exactly.
It doesn't do much for me in terms of, drivers all being together and things like that. It's a very strange photo.
Actually, one thing we have missed, though, is this is where it's perfectly spaced for kids to get autographs. They can fit them in amongst the drivers and...
No.
Sure.
I'm just thinking there was some marketing boffin in some office going, hey, this is going to be absolutely perfect.
Well, that's probably what that white space down the bottom's for. That's for the autograph part. But I don't think they all needed to be that far apart to put the little bit down the bottom. So
just
that's
think
fine
plenty
by
of
me,
room.
personally.
Is this supposed to be like an official document of the drivers for the season? Because what if Doohan gets kicked out, or what if they swap someone else out, halfway through the year? Like, do they reshoot it? Do they
They
Photoshop
just
someone?
Photoshop them out. It's easy.
Worth more money because it's a collector's item then.
No one overlaps. So a little bit with the helmet there on.
With Carlos and Lewis, yeah, and Pierre, yeah. But
Yeah.
that's what they did
Just had to
last
cut his
year.
head out and put the new head on.
Yeah. But I mean, that's what happened last year is, partway through for the intro, they swapped the drivers out. So as drivers dropped in and added in, they just put the new footage.
Do you think they were feeling sorry for Carlos and they just put him in the middle there so he's nice and front and centre? Poor
Carlos
Max
is
just
actually only
sitting down to the
3'5",
side.
so
Nathan, I just want to clarify. Are you saying they're going for a diversity look here just to try and get all the crosshairs? Is that what we're saying? Or?
They do look pretty random. They're spread around fairly randomly, which is
Yeah,
sweet.
we've only got so much time to apologise in the next episode, so let's move on from that.
Well, let's move on from the photo because this is
Okay.
not always a visual medium, is it? Podcasting.
No,
So-
true. But I guess in that regards, it's a really good tie-in because as we've been watching or listening or following a little bit of the testing over this week, we've had 3 days of testing in Bahrain. Very interesting sessions. Reliability of the cars, it was exceptional, but maybe the photo leads to the fact that Carlos actually was the fastest for the entire 3 days. So if we have a look at it, we had George who set the fastest time on the final day of testing, but Carlos was the top of the timesheet on day 2 with 1 minute 29.348.
Correct. Do you want me to fill in here?
That'd be great.
I'm going to preface anything we say is probably going to be wrong because this is just testing. This is the time of year when if your favourite team or driver does well, then you'll go and tell everyone that they're looking really good and they're really strong. But if your favourite team doesn't do well, no, it's all different fuel loads and the weather and no, they'll be there at the end of the day. So especially
Except-
day 1 and 2, until teams actually put some laps together, it's just very hard to pick a rank.
I know where you're going, Lockie.
I believe Mr. Stroll might have had certain different words about that as he was leaving the track and someone actually asked him, what did you think of that? And his response was, we've actually gone backwards. He was not happy with the car or the performance of it in that testing at all. So Aston Martin has, and they reckon that's sunk like a stone a little bit in comparison to where they thought they might be. I know Adrian Newey starts there, I think, tomorrow or something like that, and he's already asked for a bed to be put in his office. But, so a bit of commitment there, that's fine. But I don't think Aston Martin is where they thought they would be after that 3 days of testing.
No, I think they looked the most unreliable. They looked the poorest. I mean, yeah, I guess we can joke, but there's a couple of things that did come out of the test. And one was that although Williams, Carlos Sainz was saying he doesn't think they'll be on podiums or anything or top 5s, but he definitely feels like the car's improved based on what he drove in testing last year. So they look pretty good. Yeah, I'd agree that Aston seems to have gone backwards. And there were a number of teams that did, obviously, long run. They do like heavy fuel runs. They might do 5 to 10 laps on heavier fuel. Depending on the time of day, morning, afternoon, what the track's like, has it rained, what's the temperature. you can read a bit into it, but in general, it looks like the pecking order that I think at least three of us said would be the top three teams. It seems like it should be McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull in the top four.
Two things sort of stood out. One was Sauber will almost definitely finish last based on testing.
Yeah, it looks like.
And the other one was everyone's quite concerned about just how fast and reliable McLaren's car was.
Yeah, it looked very good. And I think there was one or two laps that they did. They were doing like a faster lap. I think Lando did one. He set a purple middle sector and pitted at the end of the lap after he made a small mistake. Like, I don't think McLaren's shown their true speed yet. I think some of the other teams might have been actually pushing to get some faster laps, like Williams, just to really see what the car could do at the moment. So,
yeah, I would love to know if McLaren actually had theirs dialed all the way up or whether they still had a notch or two left to go on that engine.
Well, when you think about it, Lando was 13th in the order and Oscar was 8th. So for world champions, there's more in that. Again, I think they were testing the car, seeing what it was doing with the changes that they've made. Lando eased it back after day one. Oscar worked up to it on to day three. So, but I think that's where you look at Williams. Williams is looking like a much tighter unit. And I think JV, he's pulling that together nicely. I mean, James Vowles has said that he's not expecting to get wins until 27, 28.
Yeah, they've got realistic expectations, but that car just seems a lot more balanced and better to drive than it was, 2 or 3 years ago. And
definitely agree.
Yes, it seemed to be going quite well.
I find it interesting that you've got Lewis driving the Ferrari, presumably that Carlos had last year, and he's slower than Carlos in a car that was not very good last year. And I know it's all testing, there's nothing in it, but so I looked up the lap record from last year was 1:32.608. So they're doing probably pretty good laps. Williams.
I think that's a race lap record, probably. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Look, race laps are different, aren't they?
But they were still quicker than qualifying. Like Williams' time was like a good margin quicker than their qualifying time at the same track last year. But again, depends on the track and the weather and everything as well. But yeah,
I
definitely seems quick.
Saw a post made by Carlos Sainz that he's really played down the results from the weekend or from the testing, just going, look, it's all not expecting to do that well. We're gonna, maybe we get on the podium 6 times this year or something. So he's really played it down, but can't be all bad.
Well, it also comes down to reliability too.
And I think Albon was quite impressed with what Sainz has brought to their team in terms of his
nothing but praise,
his experience, and knows how stuff works. So yeah.
Yep. I think the general consensus was that Williams might be battling with Alpine for that sort of 5th spot in the championship. Alpine didn't look too bad.
Do you know what? It's really funny. I think someone actually put that on their prediction.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see at the end of the year about that.
Well, we'll find out that at the end of the season. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
I shredded mine.
Don't worry. It's recorded for prosperity.
And I think the other team that went backwards on last year, but just by looking at the testing results, would be the Racing Bulls. So Yuki and Hadjar, they just didn't look like they had great pace. They struggled a bit. So I'm having a Japanese whiskey in honor of Yuki because he's going to have a pretty bit by the looks of it. Sorry, have to bleep that one out. But yeah, it'll be a tough year. It'll be a tough year.
That looks like a short glass too. Oh, it's a tall glass. Oh, wow.
Just a small hand. And really, when it's Lewis's transition to Ferrari, it's been a month. So with that, it looks to have been pretty smooth. The second fastest time overall. And Lewis was sharing his confidence in regards to his transition to the team and how that's all going. So thoughts on Ferrari?
Yeah, Lewis looked pretty good.
Testing.
Yeah. I mean, Lewis himself said that I think in one of the sessions he drove, they made no setup changes. He just wanted to get miles on the car, get used to how it handled, get a feel for the balance. And then they tried a few different directions to see what the car responded to, and it's just getting his head around that car. But yeah, like you said, he's only had a month in the team, and he said himself it takes a lot of time and effort to build relationships and to get that culture. And you've got your engineers and mechanics around you that work with you every race weekend and back at the factory. You have to get to know them. So he seemed really positive, though. I think it looks like he's been pleasantly surprised. So, yeah, I think he's fitting.
There's
well.
also the language barrier too, that he doesn't speak Italian.
Yeah.
So he's got a translator going, if this doesn't work, they then have to translate that to get it across to the engineers to say, well, he likes it this way or that way. So
Yeah.
that'll be a challenge as well.
He genuinely wants to be there too, though. Like, he's really wants
Absolutely.
to. I mean, they all do, but this is like childhood dream kind of wants to be
100%. And you watch the way he drives. You can never doubt the fact that he's there to win. Like, he's just got that mentality. He's had it from day one and still there. So if he's still got it, like Alonso, then keep going.
And it's a really good comparison because they've also just had the Time Life article with Lewis in it, where Lewis has said, "I'm a dedicated driver. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I'm all about racing," which is exactly
I can afford
like
to
Fernando.
die.
Plenty of drivers have said once you have kids, and then you hesitate when you go for the outside overtaking move. Yeah, I think.
But
I was going to say also with Ferrari and McLaren and how these cars look, don't forget, like, there's no big step rule change this year. So what you could reasonably expect is that there'll be incremental improvements from how they finished the year last year. No one's really going to have found a second of pace, over the winter. They're all going to be still relatively close because the field's been sort of compressing as everyone converges on the same sort of aero characteristics and design philosophy and whatever. But there are a couple of teams that look like, like we said, have done well. Williams would be one of them for sure. Alpine too, to a degree.
yeah, and when you look at the rookies, I mean, I'm going to say 3 rookies. I know there's some others, but they've had time in the car. They've actually raced in F1, but from Bortoleto, Hadjar, and Antonelli. I mean, Antonelli was the only one to break the 1:30 mark. He's looking strong, as people were expecting.
Yeah.
The other thing is too, the rookies have been screwed over a little bit in terms of what they can test with in that too, because they've changed the regulations on how much time they can spend in the older cars. And even the current drivers were going to come in as a rookie now. It's pretty tough.
Yeah, although I heard someone the other day say, they were talking about the difficulty of the cars these days, and that they were saying the cars are a lot easier to drive, so they weren't surprised that a rookie can come in and, like Antonelli and Hadjar and that, and be pretty much on the pace compared to their, a seasoned teammate. But it's that last 5 tenths or 6 tenths that you have to find and do consistently every lap. That's the really hard part to find. But I think, like you said, Christian, there was a few guys there who did well in the test. Antonelli was a standout. I thought he was a sensational test. Like, he was always aggressive. He was, hustling the car. He drove well. His times were good. You would think Mercedes would be super happy with how he went over those 3 days. Like, really happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at the reliability of all the cars as well. I think this is something where you talk about we're getting to the end of these regulations. The field is just so tight and compact now that the cars are almost blueprints of each other. Apart from minor alterations that are going to happen, is you're going to see that this is the tightest, and I'd argue probably one of the most competitive seasons we've seen in a long time. Over testing, we did not have one red flag due to car issues. I had to laugh.
We just had a bus on the track.
Bus on the track was interesting.
But
and
they
if you
are
look
going
out
to
to your
investigate
right, you'll
that.
see the cars coming right at us.
Now, the bus was empty, apparently, so it was just the bus driver who was sitting a couple of inches higher after he'd been out there. But they are going to investigate it. But how does this happen? I mean, this is where they've said this is never going to happen again, since the fatal crash.
The only reason I heard they noticed it was that it set purple sectors and finished ahead of the Kick Sauber.
It was a Toyota too, wasn't it, Nate? That's good.
Hey, Lachlan, our bold prediction is going to be coming true.
Yeah,
that's Kazoo Racing starting their entry.
It's actually
stickers
camouflage. It's the new chassis they're going to run next year. It's really good. Yeah.
But we had the bus and we also had the power outage. So there was no power on day one for an hour. So
and then the glass panel broke.
Yeah, from race
glass
control.
Panel fell on the track.
That's one angry race controller to be smacking the window so hard it pops out and falls down the tracks.
And the other thing of note was that it was sort of unseasonably cold for that test as well. So I think the maximums were down around 15, 16 degrees on the first day or two. There was rain. So it wasn't your typical Bahrain test.
And you mentioned rain. I mean, this is where how unprepared people were for those conditions. There's only 3 teams that brought inters to testing. And I think it was Aston Martin who brought 3 sets of inters.
Who knows
Maybe
why?
their weather app's better.
Yeah,
Maybe.
possibly. I don't think they're not. Yeah, they're not going to learn much from running inters over there. But someone went out.
Well, they had the ones
The
with
Haas
inters.
did,
So.
I think. Yeah.
And speaking of Haas, I mean, this was one of the highlights for me. This must be the new cooling a modification that they've made to their cars. If you saw Ollie Behrman at the engine cover just ripping off, and he had no idea, so he was still going, and they're going, no, you've got to come in.
That's the second time that's happened to them, though, because it happened last year as well, that one of their engine hoods blew off or ripped off in as well, but they haven't quite explained as to why that's happened twice now.
I think it shows you how hard some teams are working to reduce weight in their cars and push the limit on how thick their panels are.
I think they need to get away from the Temu screws and go back to the other ones.
Oh, well, it's your favourite team with the black car. It'll just be carbon fibre for the entire race.
Exactly.
That works for me.
So any other thoughts on testing? Any changes to your predictions now that testing is complete?
Can't change them, they're locked in.
It's too late. It's too late.
Too late.
I'm feeling good about mine. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling good.
Positive.
Dan and I feel just as confident when we first put them in as what we do now.
Yeah, no change. No change.
Okay, so with a desk full of confidence, that brings us to our first break. We'll be back with you in a few minutes. And welcome back to the Downshift. For those of you new to Formula One, we want to help by digging into some of the interesting and, to be honest, sometimes some of the confusing aspects of the sport. So we've set some homework for our newbies to share with us a little bit of research and their thoughts on topics that may be of interest to you, our listeners. A couple that have been spoken about were Flow Vis Paint used on the cars during testing and the upcoming flexi-wing rules that are coming into force at the Spanish Grand Prix. So, Schwags, you had a look into Flow Vis, so tell us all about it.
Thanks, Christian. I took up the Flow Vis pretty quick because it was looked actually kind of interesting. So Flow Vis, let's start with just a bit of background of that. Flow Vis is a new method they use to measure aerodynamic performance of a car. The old method was they used tape. So the old time, engineers would stick small amounts of brightly coloured tape, a coloured aerodynamic tape to various parts of the car. As the car moved, the air would push against the tape, causing it to shift and flutter in a way that showed the flow of the air. And the tape revealed areas where the airflow was disturbed, where the airflow was running smoothly, or where it was separating, leaving the surface of the car. However, as more of a qualitative tool, engineers could observe the tape's behaviour, but could not easily quantify the airflow pattern in great detail. So the tape was quite less precise. So the modern method now is the Flow Vis Paint, which is short for Flow Visualization Paint. So the Flow Vis paint is a liquid applied to the car's surface in a very thin layer, which dries to form a series of bright, visible markings or patterns once the car moves at high speed. The paint is designed to flow and break apart or change in a way that visually represents how the air flows over the car. What it shows, Flow Vis paint gives a more detailed and consistent visualization of the airflow. When engineers look at the result, they can analyze the precise way air interacts with the car's surface from smooth airflows to areas where the air might be swirling or turbulent. Advantages over tape. Flow Vis paint provides a much more detailed scientific visualization of airflow. It is easier to apply and analyze compared to tape, as it can show continuous patterns, allowing engineers to better understand how aerodynamic changes will impact performance. So the differences are it's more precise, detailed airflow. Engineers can gather more data, better informed decisions about improving aerodynamics. Flow Vis is quicker to apply. It doesn't require the monitoring and adjustment that tape sometimes did. So basically now they're using Flow Vis paint because it's much better. And then they try and assess the car at the end of their lap times, and so does the media too, apparently. Looking at testing, they all want to jump in and see what's going on. But I wonder whether the media actually know what they're looking for when they're looking at the patterns of Flow Vis on the various parts of the car.
Yeah, well, the teams definitely do.
You go, Happy.
I was going to say the teams definitely know what they're looking at. So they've got lots of photographers around a track. They'll be taking photos, and whether or not they can apply the same ideas to their own car, at least it helps them better understand the concepts of other cars and what they're doing with their aero package.
So one thing I found in the research was that,
they were using on certain, like the wings and the fronts and the back, just to see some teams used a lot. Other teams had very minimal parts and were really honing on specific areas. Like McLaren, for example, when their car drove into the pits and they tried to hide what had been on the Flow Vis, which is ironic given that all the cameras around the track had taken photos of it as it was going around. I thought that was, I don't know if it was more for theatre or what it was, but it just seemed pointless at the end that all the engineers stood around the car at the end when it came back into the pits. But you could certainly see that. Yeah. Before it went into the pits, there was photos of the whole car with the Flow Vis down the side as to what it actually done anyway. So
the paint is usually applied to parts of the car like the front wing or side pods. I don't think McLaren got that brief.
No, they dipped the car in Flow.
The whole think it was on the special. Car was covered.
They got a trade discount at Bunnings though, so they probably got they probably got 10 litres instead of 4 because it was with better value anyway.
Well, you might as well use it up. So yeah, that's fair enough.
Zach is an excitable person. He'd just be going, "Put it all on."
I'd hate to be a mechanic because that stuff, it's made out of like a fluoro powder, and they mix it with like a light oil, so it's actually a sticky sort of oil. And so apparently the mechanics say that when they spray it on, you always get some on you, and it stains clothes. It's hard to get off, and it's just disgusting to work with. So you can imagine there was like 3 or 4 of them, with pressure pumps, which sometimes explode apparently, and when they pump them too much, spraying the whole side of that car. It was a huge mess, but yeah, interesting.
You can imagine getting home. I know what you've been doing today.
Even P. Diddy thought it was messy.
Oh, we got there. Okay.
They always do their best. They always do their best to stand in front of the car to protect it from like a really good photo or whatever. But like we were talking before the episode briefly, like even the on-track cameras, they're like 4K cameras. So like the teams can watch footage of the car anyway, and their photographers around the track will get some good shots just to help them understand, what the McLaren's doing with their aero package.
Oh, look, and I think it was a bit of theatre and a bit of fun, jokingly holding off the cameraman who's trying to get the photo above the car, above the human wall, and yeah.
You can see the photographer smiling. They know what's going on, but they've got to try. They want to get a good shot of the Flow Vis, so yeah.
And look, it's testing. It's probably the most boring television coverage. I feel sorry for the commentators. It's basically an 8-hour-long podcast where they're trying to fill in what the hell's going on.
Well, they do a great job.
It
makes it a lot easier when a whole car's covered in green paint or a bus just drives onto the circuit,
Didn't they have George Russell commentating for a while as well? He was in the commentary box?
Co-commentating with Max Verstappen.
Oh, right.
They also sometimes apparently have like a more of an invisible Flow Vis that they can put on the car, and if they put that on the car, they can put the car back in the pits, but then they have to get like a light, like a UV,
like a black light,
UV light to then take, but it's harder to take good photos of it apparently. So,
there's so many lines, so little time.
So now it's fluoro green, everyone can see it.
What's the rating of
Not
this
that
show?
sort of podcast, Chris.
The black edition.
Yeah.
And special guest next week is Dexter.
And so as we look at some other bits and pieces, we're also seeing the changes to the rules around the wings. And so Lockie, you looked into that for us this week as well.
Yeah, it was interesting with that because the rules and regulations for that are now that they're giving them 8 races or till Spain basically to lock in the front wing, and the flex on that sort of determines then entry and exit speeds for cornering. Obviously, that's a big factor, and I think off the top of my head, it's about 5 degrees is the flex they're allowed on that at the moment. But that really wasn't probably the biggest part of flexi-wing gate from the weekend. That was probably more related now to the backs of the car, where there was a bit of protest going on from, I believe it was McLaren's wing, where when it was going down the straight, it appeared to actually had some flex, and they were saying it was giving them a bit of extra DRS because it was allowing it to flatten a little bit and therefore get more top-end speed out of it. So my understanding is I think Red Bull and possibly Mercedes have already protested that to the stewards. We're interested to see how that comes out. But it was interesting that I think it was Zach Brown sort of was jumping in relation to the front wing, saying, I'm not sure why they're giving us 8 races to get this right. He couldn't understand why they were giving such a long period of time to actually get it right. But I don't think that'll be the big one at the minute. It'll be more the rear wings and trying to make sure that they are rigid as opposed to being flexy like that.
Yeah, mini DRS as they keep calling it.
Yes.
And look, It's not the start of an F1 season without a complaint from Red Bull.
Oh, look, and to be fair, that won't be the only complaint for the season, let's be honest. Like, there'll be a couple more coming through.
Or any team, for that matter.
The mini DRS, is that on Yuki's car?
Nah, and Isaac's.
Oh, jeez.
And Happy, you've very surreptitiously slipped in here a little bit of a chat on the aero rakes. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the aero rakes, which I always find interesting, which are those big, honeycomb-like metal structures they put on the car in testing. It's it's really just designed for the engineers to measure the airflow and the pressure around the car on track. So they're usually made out of titanium. They have either what's called a pitot tube to measure the air velocity or pressure at certain points. But in F1, they most often use something called a keel probe, which can actually measure the air pressure from angles. So they can actually measure how the car's aero performs while it's turning corners as well as going in a straight line. But yeah, I'm always interested when they come out with these contraptions on the front of the car, the middle of the car, the back of the car, and just trying to validate, how close is their CFD and wind tunnel data compared to the car on track. Like if everything is matched up really well, they know they can develop the car and move forward. But if they find differences or problems, then they've obviously got to calibrate their systems a bit better. But quite a few cars came out with those, obviously, at the start of the season. They'll be testing new aero, new floors, new wings. So I like that about testing. We see cars with Flow Vis and, they're all watching each other to see if someone's brought something new to the track, like, the mini DRS complaints and all sort of things. So, yeah, it makes it fun.
To be fair, when they come out with the aero rake, they're not going to try for a quick lap. So that's certainly not going to be set on fire when they're bringing that out and putting it on the car. So.
Usually constant speed and going around corners. But amazing bits of kit if they can use that to correlate the real car to wind tunnel or CFD. It's cool.
And if you look at how far it's come, I mean, if you go back to Ford versus Ferrari, and for those listening, having watched the film, you'll see where they were going and testing and they got the little bits of yarn or wool and strapped
wool tough testing.
Wool tough testing. And so, you're getting a bit of tape, putting the wool onto the car, and you can actually watch the wool move as you're going. And so this is the advancement, and you see that correlation between wind tunnel and real life. It gets more and more accurate. And so you're seeing the teams who are investing heavily in wind tunnels. You're seeing in regards to where they finish in the championship, the additional wind tunnel time that they get. So it's really critical to the development as we're leading into 2026 as they're starting to look at the new platform.
Yeah.
Would I be right in saying that wind tunnel testing can't simulate like cornering and that kind of thing? Or
some of them can now, apparently. Yeah. And they use those aero rakes to try and validate those numbers. So they do testing with wind at an angle, with the steering at an angle, that sort of thing. So it's definitely consideration
with Lance Stroll at an angle.
You'll hear.
Well, they do that from the sideways as the car's going sideways down the track
into the wall.
Yeah, you still hear teams and drivers talking about instability when the car's changing direction, or if the wind picks up, or that sort of thing. So,
well, you'd assume the amount of money that Aston spent on their wind tunnel, that theirs would actually have the most latest up-to-date technology in it.
You would, 100%. And they're amazing bits of kit. Like if you ever get to watch a documentary or just do a search on YouTube for F1 wind tunnel testing, and massive, complex machines, rolling road, then the teams tend to produce like 3/4 or half size scale models and do all their testing with that, and it's amazing, really amazing stuff.
Well, I think I read some of the old testing things are like from Second World War kind of airplane testing wind tunnels, not at all designed for, Formula One cars.
Yeah, and they've been adapted over the years. So I think teams with who are developing their own or building new ones like Aston are going to have an advantage because it's new technology, it's modern, they control it. They're not leasing, a wind tunnel from someone else, which is what teams have done in the past. Like Haas, for example, didn't have their own wind tunnel. They had to lease time from someone else. And with F1, the other focus obviously changing is F1 is restricting the amount of wind tunnel time you can have each year. And so teams are investing in their CFD models, computational fluid dynamics. So they do everything inside a computer to look at airflow over the cars, but they're limited in that time as well. So the technology has to get better, faster. That's a really good question. I think that would be difficult to monitor without some
It's an honesty system.
Oversight,
no worries.
Some detailed logging I don't know.
But if you're Aston Martin, for example, you're also making road cars. So that testing, that was all we were testing. The new road car coming out wasn't the 10 hours we just put the F1 car in there for. How are they going to know?
Well, the thing is, road cars are a lot simpler than F1 cars. Up until now, like we've seen, there are some cars like the Valkyrie and others which might have some similar sort of components or philosophies to F1, but you'll learn nothing much from that you could apply to an F1 car. Not these days, I don't think.
With £200 million being spent on the Aston Martin complex, I mean, you're going to see some real development coming out of that workshop.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, as we're about to close off this episode, team, any other final thoughts on testing or what's coming into the new season?
It will be interesting to see the teams that actually did the testing, where they finished in the testing versus how they run in Melbourne, and whether a couple of them were just literally running the engines at a lower spec or whether actually they were at full race spec level.
That sounds like a great topic for an upcoming episode.
I want to see some teams running Flow Vis as their livery.
Sabre.
Yeah, they put that out there for them.
Halfway there, yeah.
They were doing their Flow Vis at F175.
No, the paint wasn't dry.
And it still looks good.
They were in
Looking forward to Melbourne now. I think testing's out of the way. I'm just keen to see the cars hit the track, and good to see how it all shakes out.
I'm actually curious to drive in there and just see what the setup's looking like so far as they start putting it all together.
It's pretty cool because you can drive through with the grandstand being built.
Yep.
Just remember, there are speed cameras all around the track.
Yeah, not at speed though. You got to do the speed limit. You can't drive through. You got to slow down.
Did you wave as you were driving through?
Well, I was in Nathan's car, so it's all right. It's fine.
I was fortunate enough to actually drive the track once it was closed down because many years ago I was working for St John Ambulance and we were providing all the first aid around the track, and so we had to go from point to point to point around the track. So we had to drive around the actual.
It says in an ambulance or in an actual car?
Just an actual car. Excellent. So team, with only a few episodes under our belts, look, it'd be really great to hear what our listeners are thinking of the podcast so far. So please, we'd love for you to leave us a comment, question, or even a suggestion on how you would like to hear from us, ideas for the show, things that you're liking, or even though we've only just got started. I think we're having a great time doing it. Would you agree, team?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Don't all three of you write in at once, please. We can't take that many inquiries.
So, but look, I think it's an important part for people listening to become part of the team and join us on the ride. So, look, we want to make this your show also. We'll share your thoughts on and comments on upcoming episodes and include some of the content that you think would make this really interesting. So, but for now, thank you for listening to the Downshift. Our next episode lands on Thursday. So until then, have fun and take it to the limit. That's the checkered flag for this episode of the Downshift. Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us in the paddock. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss a lap. And hey, if we've earned it, drop us a 5-star review. It really helps us climb the grid and reach more motorsport fans. Want to take it to the next level? Join the DownShift pit crew by supporting us through Patreon. You'll get exclusive content and help fuel the show to keep us pushing flat out every week. Until next time, keep it fast, keep it fun, and we'll catch you on the next lap.